A black car slowly approaches the tall iron gates. The gates open silently. The car enters the grounds and stops next to a large stone house. The engine turns off. Kim Taeyong sits in the back seat, motionless. He looks out the window. There's not a single light in the house. Only the streetlights in the yard illuminate it. He closes his eyes again. Today has been a long and difficult day. Constant conversations, calculations, the need to control every word. He feels a heavy fatigue throughout his body. He opens his eyes, and his face becomes calm and firm again. He pushes the door and steps outside. The evening air is chilly. He doesn't turn around to look at the driver. He walks toward the front door. He inserts the key into the lock and turns it. The door opens. He steps inside. The hallway is dark and quiet. He flicks the switch. A small lamp on the wall comes on. He hangs his keys on the hook, the sound of the metal keys jingling loudly in the silence. He takes off his black coat and hangs it in the closet. Underneath, he wears a dark suit. He adjusts the sleeve of his shirt. He walks down the hallway toward his office. His steps clatter loudly on the wooden floor. He doesn't call out to anyone. There are no other people in the house. He enters the office and turns on the light. The large room is illuminated by the soft glow of the lamps. His large desk, chair, and bookshelves are here. He throws his briefcase on the sofa. He goes to the window and looks out into the dark garden. He stands there for a few minutes, thinking about the past day. Then he turns and sits down in the chair at the table. He doesn't open the computer. He doesn't pick up any papers. He just sits in silence. The house is so quiet that the ticking of the large wall clock in the hallway can be heard. The sound emphasizes the silence even more. He pours himself a glass of water from the carafe on the table and drinks it slowly. He looks at the opposite wall, but doesn't see it. He simply rests in the silence of his empty house. A woman quietly enters the house through the back door from the courtyard. It's Ayanda, the cleaning lady. She carefully closes the door behind her. She stands in the dark and listens. The house is quiet. She knows the owner is home. She saw his car in the garage. She hopes he's already asleep or busy in his study. Today she had a problem. Her little daughter, Jimin, couldn't be left alone. Ayanda wrapped the sleeping girl in a warm blanket and brought her with her. She carefully places her large bag of rags and cleaning supplies on the floor. Then she carefully places her daughter, wrapped in a blanket, on the old sofa in the hallway. The 4-year-old girl is fast asleep and hasn't woken up. She's clutching a toy bunny. Ayanda looks at her daughter and worries. She knows she shouldn't do this, but she had no other choice. She leans over and quietly whispers to the sleeping girl, "Sleep, Jimin. Mom is here. Don't get up from this couch, okay?" Then she straightens the blanket, picks up her bag, and walks down the hallway. She needs to start cleaning in the office. It's the most important room. Jimin wakes up cold. She opens her eyes and sees not her small room, but a high, dark ceiling. She's lying on an unfamiliar couch. Her mother is gone. She sits up and rubs her eyes. It's quiet and dark all around. Only one lamp dimly illuminates the corridor. She becomes afraid. "Mom?" she calls quietly. No one answers. She gets off the couch. Her bare feet touch the cold floor. She holds her bunny in her arms. She remembers her mother going somewhere with a bag. The girl hears a faint sound in the distance. A familiar sound. Her mother moving something. Jimin follows the sound. She walks slowly down a long, dark corridor. She enters a large room with large windows. The living room. There's no one here. The sound comes from behind the next door. The door is slightly open. Jimin approaches and peers inside. She sees her mother. Her mother is standing with her back to the door, dusting a large table. The girl feels calmer. She doesn't enter the room. She stands by the door and looks at her mother. She wonders what this room is. Ayanda works diligently. She carefully dusts the large table. Then she carefully arranges all the items on the table exactly as they were before. She knows the owner of the house notices every detail. She doesn't hear her daughter standing at the door. She thinks Jimin is still fast asleep on the couch in the hallway. She doesn't have time to check. She has to work quickly and quietly. She dusts the bookshelves. Then she vacuums the large rug on the floor. The noise of the vacuum cleaner drowns out all other sounds. When she's finished, she turns off the vacuum. Silence falls. She looks around the room. Everything is clean. Everything is in its place. She nods, satisfied with her work. She gathers her rags and cleaning supplies into her bag. Then she leaves the office, quietly closing the door behind her. She heads to the kitchen to continue cleaning there. She doesn't see a small shadow flash across the office just before the door closed. Taeyong is sitting in his office, reviewing documents. Suddenly, his phone vibrates. He glances at the screen. There's an urgent matter that requires his immediate presence. It won't take long, but he needs to go now. He frowns. He doesn't want to leave the house again. But it's important. He gets up from the table, grabs his jacket, and leaves the office. He walks down the hallway, out the front door, and gets into the car. The car starts and drives out of the yard. The matter is resolved faster than he expected. 40 minutes later, his car pulls up to the house again. He's back earlier than planned. He re-enters the house, takes off his coat, and heads back to his office. He wants to finish his paperwork. When Ayanda left the office and closed the door, Jimin was already inside. The girl quickly slipped into the room as her mother turned to the vacuum cleaner. She wanted to hide and surprise her mother. She looked around. The room was large and solemn. She saw a large table. Under the table, it was dark and seemed like a good hiding place. She crawled under the table and curled up on the carpet. She felt warm and cozy. She hugged her bunny and waited. She heard her mother finish cleaning and leave. Then there was silence. Jimin began to doze under the table. Suddenly, she heard a sound, not her mother's. It was heavy footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps were approaching the office door. The girl froze. She was frightened. Those were the footsteps of a stranger. She pressed herself against the table leg and closed her eyes tightly, hoping no one would see her. The door to the office opened. Taeyong enters the office and immediately stops. His hand is still gripping the doorknob. Something is wrong. He can't put his finger on it, but the air in the room is different. Not the same as the one he left half an hour ago. He slowly closes the door behind him. His eyes quickly scan the room. The light is on as he left it. The books on the shelves are straight. The table. His gaze lingers on the table. His table. The leather chair is pulled back from the table. Just a few centimeters, but it's pulled back. He always places it right next to it. He remembers that clearly. He takes a step forward. His face is expressionless, but inside, a familiar wariness is ignited. Someone has been here. He approaches the table and places his palm on the surface next to the chair. The wood is cool, clean, too clean. He notices a slight streak of dampness, the mark of a rag that hasn't yet had time to dry. The cleaning lady, Ayanda, she's working today, but she never stays this late, and she never disturbs the order, never moves his chair. He feels a slight irritation. His space, his sanctuary, has been violated. Another person's touch has lingered on his things. He stands still and listens. The house is quiet, but this silence now seems deceptive. Someone was here just now. Perhaps they are still here. Ayanda is standing in the kitchen, washing the sink. The water flows quietly. Suddenly, she hears a familiar sound, the front door slamming. Then heavy, confident footsteps in the hallway. He's back. Too early. Her heart skips a beat, then starts beating fast and loud. She wipes her hands and walks out of the kitchen into the hallway. She wants to slip quietly into the hallway, to the back door, pick up Jimin, and leave. But first, she glances toward the sofa, where she left her daughter. The sofa is empty. The blanket is crumpled and lying on the floor. A toy bunny is lying nearby. A cold wave of dread washes over Ayanda. Her legs go weak. "Jimin?" she whispers, but there's barely a sound. She turns and looks at the office door. It's closed. The master of the house's footsteps have faded. He's already inside. And then she understands. The curious little girl. The office door, slightly open as she left. The hum of the vacuum cleaner, drowning out all other sounds. "No," her lips whisper silently. "No, no, no." She can't move. She can't enter the office. She can't knock. She has no right to disturb him. The rules she's known by heart all these months bind her more tightly than chains. She approaches the door and presses her forehead against it. The wood is cold. She freezes, trying to breathe as quietly as possible, and listens. There is no sound from behind the door. Only the ticking of the large clock in the hallway, which now seems like a scream. Taeyong slowly releases the back of his chair. He steps away from the desk and begins to survey the room. His movements are calm and fluid. Like a predator who knows its prey is close, he walks along the bookshelves. His eyes glide over the spines of the books, over the small spaces between them. Nothing. He peers behind a tall floor lamp against the wall. No one. He approaches the large sofa against the far wall, slowly bends down and looks underneath. Only shadows and dust. The clock in the hallway loudly counts down the seconds. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound is now irritating him. It's preventing him from concentrating. He walks around the entire perimeter of the room, checks the space behind the curtains by the window. Nothing. The room is empty. but his instincts scream that it is not. The feeling of someone else's presence does not disappear. He returns to the center of the room, to his desk. Perhaps he imagined it. Perhaps Ayanda was simply in a hurry and accidentally bumped into the chair. He's about to sit up, but his gaze falls on the carpet at his feet. Something small and bright lies on the dark burgundy pile. Something that shouldn't be there. He bends down and picks it up. It's a button. A small plastic button. Bright yellow. It's warm, as if it's just been held in his hand. Taeyong slowly straightens up. He clutches the button in his palm. His eyes are now cold and sharp. He looks at his desk, at the massive tabletop and the dark space beneath it. He takes one silent step forward, then another. He's no longer simply checking the room. Now he's stalking. Taeyong stands 2 steps away from his desk. He peers into the darkness beneath the massive tabletop. At first, he sees only a shadow. Then his gaze catches a detail. A small fragment of fabric. Not dark, not the color that matches the carpet or the wood. Bright, light blue, with tiny white and blue speckles. The fabric doesn't lie still. It moves slightly, rhythmically and minutely, as if someone is breathing underneath it, or trembling. All doubts vanish. Someone is hiding under his desk. Someone small, judging by the size of the fold of fabric. His first thought is a trick, a ruse, some strange, unthinkable trap. But the yellow button in his hand and the child's calico tell a different story. This is not a professional spy or a hired killer. This is a child. The cold rage that had begun to rise within him fades, replaced by icy, pure bewilderment. How did a child get here? Who brought him? And most importantly, why? Thoughts race through his mind, but none find a logical explanation. He places the button in his pocket. He doesn't bend down. He doesn't try to peek. He speaks. His voice rings out sharply and loudly in the quiet office. There's no shouting in it, but there's steel. The same steel that makes grown men freeze. Come out! Now! No answer. Only the fabric under the table twitches more violently. A short, strangled sound is heard. A sob. Childish, frightened, real. Taeyong feels his irritation return, mingling with growing curiosity. Who is this child and why is he so afraid? He takes a half step forward, his shadow falling on that same bright fabric. I said, get out. I won't repeat it. There's a dangerous quiet in his voice now. He rarely raises his voice. More often than not, his quiet, even tone is more effective than shouting. He waits. A second. Another. A rustling sound comes from under the table, barely audible, and another quiet, ragged sigh. Someone there is gathering their courage. First, a hand appears. A small, dark hand that grasps the edge of the carpet. Its fingers clutch the pile. Then a second hand appears, still clutching something fluffy and mangy, the ear of a stuffed rabbit. Then a head slowly emerges from under the table. Dark, curly hair is tousled. Dust from the carpet is visible in it. Large, wide-open eyes, dark, almost black, stare straight at him, full of tears and animal fear. Then the whole face appears, a round, childish face with full cheeks, glistening with tear streaks. The nose is upturned, the lips trembling. A child, a little girl, about 4 years old, crawls out from under the table and kneels on the carpet. She's wearing a simple blue dress with white polka dots. A button is missing from one cuff. She's clutching her rabbit so tightly it seems about to burst. She stares at the enormous stranger blocking the light, unable to move or make a sound. Only her thin shoulders tremble slightly. Taeyong looks at her. He sees fear. He sees dust on her dress and in her hair. He sees the old, cheap toy in her hands. He sees a child, a perfectly ordinary, small, frightened child. No trickery, no threat. Just pure, helpless panic. His own tension gradually fades, leaving only a profound, utter bewilderment. What should he do now? He hasn't the slightest idea. In his world, there are no protocols for finding a child under his desk. He expects her to cry, to scream, to run. But she simply sits on her knees and looks at him. Her fear gradually, millimeter by millimeter, begins to blend with curiosity. Her wet eyes study his face, his formal suit, his motionless posture. She glances at the table she had just been hiding behind, then back at him. He studies her too. He hasn't seen children this close. He can't even remember when. She doesn't look like a Korean child. Her features, skin color, hair texture, everything suggests a different origin, and that adds another layer of mystery. He looks at the bald spot on her hair, at the worn-out socks on her small feet. This is not a child from a wealthy family. A moment of silence stretches, filled only with the ticking of the clock. They both stand frozen in this strange, awkward pause, unsure who should make the first move, or what it should be. And she takes the first step. Her fear seems to recede before the overwhelming need for comfort, overwhelmed by the instinctive desire to seek protection. Perhaps she doesn't see his stillness as a direct threat. Perhaps the long silence seemed less frightening to her than the scream. She rises unsteadily from her knees. Her legs tremble slightly. She takes one small, wobbly step forward, then another. She doesn't take her eyes off him. Taeyong watches, still motionless, unsure of her intentions. He wonders if she wants to run past him toward the door, but she walks right up to him, stops so close that the hem of her dress brushes his trousers. She lifts her head to see his face, and her large eyes fill with tears again. But these aren't tears of panic this time, but something else. Loneliness? Longing? She drops her bunny onto the carpet. She wraps both arms around his leg, just above the knee. Her grip is surprisingly strong. She presses her cheek against the fabric of his pants, closes her eyes, and utters a single word, quietly, but perfectly clearly, in perfect Korean, without any accent. Dad? The word hits him like a physical blow to the solar plexus. The air leaves his lungs silently. His entire body goes numb. He loses the feeling of the floor beneath his feet, the weight of his own body. His ears begin to ring, drowning out the ticking of the clock. His brain refuses to accept it. He tries to process the word, make sense of it, find a logical connection. But he can't. It's impossible. It's absurd, Ikimkid. It doesn't make any sense. He looks down at the dark curls of hair pressed against his leg. He feels the warmth of her cheek through the thin fabric. He feels the pressure of her small hands. He can't move. He can't pull away. He can't say a word. All his reactions, all his defense mechanisms, all his iron control, it all shatters against one simple, childish word. He stood frozen in absolute stillness. His mind, usually running at the frigid speed of a computer, was now empty, humming with a quiet white noise. The only thing he was aware of was the warmth emanating from the small creature that had called him Daddy, and the universe he had existed in until that moment cracked and began to slowly, irreversibly collapse. The word Daddy sounded as clearly behind the door as in the room. For Ayanda, her forehead pressed against the tree, it felt like a knife thrust. All her fear, all her rules, all her caution, all of it shattered under the impact of pure animal terror. He would find out. He would think. She couldn't even imagine what he would think. Only one thing was clear. Her daughter was in mortal danger. Not physical, perhaps, but something that could destroy their life here, deprive them of their jobs, their shelter, everything. She doesn't think. She acts. She pushes away from the door, grabs the handle, and gives it a sharp push. The wood hits the wall with a dull thud. She bursts into the office. Her eyes immediately find her daughter. Jimin stands, pressed against the man's leg, the same leg she had been hugging. Taeyong's face is frozen in mute, utterly blank shock. He doesn't even turn his head at the sound of the door opening. Jimin! Ayanda screams, her voice breaking with panic. The girl flinches and lets go of Taeyong. She turns to face her mother, a mixture of guilt and relief crossing her face. She takes a step toward her mother, but stops, casting another frightened glance at the motionless figure above her. Ayanda crosses the room in a few quick steps. She doesn't look Taeyong in the eye. She falls to her knees in front of her daughter, grabbing her by the shoulders, checking to see if she's safe and sound. I'm sorry! Her words burst out, hot and fast. Bang, Taeyong! Forgive me! I beg you! It's my fault, mine alone! She finally looks up at him. Her eyes are filled with tears, her face contorted with despair. She still holds Jimin in front of her, like a shield, like proof of her guilt. She's my daughter. She's only 4 years old. She didn't mean any harm. I couldn't leave her alone today. I broke the rules. Punish me. Fire me. But just please, Lee, she's just a child. She doesn't understand anything. She falls silent, gasping for breath. The room is silent again, but now it's broken by her heavy breathing and Jimin's quiet sobs, who finally begins to cry, frightened by her mother's panic. Taeyong slowly, very slowly, turns his head. His gaze shifts from the girl, now crying on her mother's shoulder, to Ayanda herself. He sees her tear-stained face, her trembling hands clutching the child's shoulders. He sees pure, uncontrollable terror, not of him as the boss, but of the possible consequences for her daughter. He takes a deep breath, the first since the shock. The air enters his lungs with effort. The ringing in his ears fades, replaced by the sounds of crying and the ticking of a clock. He doesn't say, "Calm down." He doesn't yell. He just watches. His mind finally starts working, gathering the facts. The cleaning lady, the child, the breaking of rules, fear. The word daddy. Why is she here? His voice sounds hoarse, Monchishi, unfamiliar to him. He asks the simplest, most logical question. Ayanda flinches as if struck. She tries to compose herself, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. The nanny didn't come today. Jameen had a slight fever this morning. I couldn't leave her alone in our room. She's so small. I thought she'd sleep. I put her on the couch in the hallway. I told her not to move. I had to start with the study so I could finish everything before you got back. I thought you'd be late. I didn't hear her come in. I was so focused on work. When I left, I closed the door and she trails off, swallowing the lump in her throat. I didn't know she was inside. I swear I didn't know. She lowers her head again, clutching her daughter to her. It was my negligence, my huge mistake. Please forgive her ignorance. She didn't mean to disturb you. She was simply scared and hid. Jimin, sobbing, wipes his nose on his mother's sweater and looks back at Taeyong. Her teary eyes are wide open. Taeyong listens. His expression doesn't change. He looks at Ayanda, then his gaze falls back to the girl. At her dust-stained dress, at the old toy that now lies on the carpet between them. He expected anger, expected her to scream, to fire her on the spot, to send them both away that very second. He would have done the same an hour ago. Logic and the rules dictated it, but the anger doesn't come. Instead, there's a strange, icy emptiness inside, an emptiness in which only one word floats, Daddy. And the sight of this little frightened girl, seeking protection from the first adult man she saw in the dark. He doesn't move toward them. He doesn't make any threatening gestures. He simply stands and watches. His analytical mind is now working on a new riddle. Why did she say that? She's not Korean. He's definitely not her father. Was it a mistake? Fright? But she said it so clearly, so deliberately. Ayanda freezes, seeing that he doesn't scream. Her panic doesn't subside, but it's mixed with bewilderment. She expected a storm. What she got was an icy, heavy silence. She doesn't know which is worse. She hugs Jimin tighter, ready to shield her at any moment. Taeyong slowly drops to one knee. The movement is unexpected and fluid. He's now almost level with the girl. He doesn't smile. His face remains serious and inscrutable. Jimin freezes, stopping his sobs. She looks at him from close range. Her eyes, large and wet, study every feature of his face. Taeyong speaks quietly, so quietly that Ayanda can barely hear. "Why did you say that?" he asks. His voice is now without the steel it once had. It's simply a question. "Why, Daddy?" Ayanda freezes, her heart pounding. She wants to intervene, to explain, but she can't move. Jimin stares at him for a few seconds. Then her gaze slides past him, across the room. She lets go of her mother and takes a small step forward, toward Taeyong's desk. She points. Taeyong turns his head, following her gesture. On the edge of the table, next to the monitor, sits a simple wooden frame. Inside is a black and white photograph. The photograph depicts a man of about 50, wearing a formal, old-fashioned suit. His face is serious, his gaze direct and firm. It's Taeyong's father. The photograph has been there for years. Taeyong barely notices it. Jimin looks at the photo, then turns and looks back at Taeyong. She looks back at the photo, then she nods, as if confirming something to herself. "You look alike," she says in her quiet, clear voice. "He has the same eyes, serious. And he also—" She searches for the word, frowning. "He stands up straight, like Dad." She says this with the simple, childish confidence of a child. For her, the connection is obvious. A similar-looking adult man in this house, in this room, where there's a photograph of another similar man. In her small, fatherless world, the logic is simple. A man in the house who looks like the man in the photograph equals Dad. Or at least, that's what you might call it when you're really scared and need someone to cling to. Taeyong looks at a photograph of his father. He looks at his own features, which, yes, he inherited from him, especially around the eyes, the shape of the cheekbones. He never thought a child, or anyone for that matter, would see the resemblance so clearly as to draw such a conclusion. The absurdity of the situation crashed down on him with renewed force. No trick, no slyness, no malicious intent, simply childish logic, based on fear and simple visual similarity. The girl sought protection and called him by the name that, in her childish logic, fit the man who resembled Daddy in the photograph. He rises slowly from his knee. His joints creak slightly. He feels an awkwardness he almost never experiences. The silence in the office is different now. Tension still hangs in the air, but Ayanda's acute panic and Taeyong's shock are slowly dissipating, leaving behind a heavy, awkward feeling of bewilderment. "Stand up," Taeyong says. Ayanda not looking at her. His voice was neutral again, but there was none of the previous harshness. "And stop crying. It's pointless." Ayanda rises unsteadily from her knees, still holding Jimin's hand. She tries to wipe her face, but her hands are shaking. Taeyong looks at the girl, who is now snuggled up to her mother again, but continues to watch him. He looks at the dirty dust marks on her dress and on his carpet. He looks at the stuffed bunny. "We're going to go out of here," he declares. "To the living room." He doesn't ask. He speaks. He turns and leaves the office without checking to see if they're following him. He just knows they will. Ayanda, stunned, grabs the cleaning bag with one hand, her daughter with the other, and follows him. Jimin picks up his bunny as he goes. In the living room, Taeyong turns on the main light. The room is filled with a bright, impersonal light. He goes to the bar and pours himself a glass of water. He doesn't offer them any. "Sit down," he says, pointing to a large sofa. Ayanda sits on the very edge, holding Jimin on her lap. She sits up straight, as if she were taking an exam. Jimin, exhausted from tears and shock, rests her head on her mother's chest and sucks her thumb, something she hasn't done in a long time. Her eyes are half closed, but she looks at Taeyong across the room. Taeyong puts down his glass. He doesn't sit. He stands at the bar, leaning his hands on it, and looks at them, at the mother and daughter, who await his verdict in fear. The atmosphere is heavy, filled with the unspoken. Ayanda expects to be fired, fined, called security, anything, but he simply watches. His face is a mask, but his eyes, those very eyes that Jimin found similar to the man in the photograph, are now analyzing, weighing. He looks at their simple, worn clothes, at the single bag containing all their equipment, at the absolute dependence evident in Ayanda's posture. "Did she have a fever?" he asks suddenly. Ayanda winces. "Yeah, no, not anymore. She slept all day. I thought she was just tired." "Did you give her any medication?" "Just some children's fever syrup, in the morning. Nothing else." He nods as if this is important information. Then his gaze falls on Jimin. "Are you thirsty?" The girl slowly takes her finger out of her mouth and nods. Ayanda wants to object, to say, "No thank you," but she doesn't have time. Taeyong takes a clean glass, pours water from the carafe, and places it on the low table in front of the sofa. Ayanda looks at the glass as if it were a trap, then at her daughter. Jimin looks at the water, then at her mother. Ayanda nods, giving permission. The girl climbs off her lap, takes the glass in both hands, and takes a few cautious sips. Then she puts the glass back and quickly returns to her mother's lap. Taeyong watches this simple action. He sees how her small hands grip the glass, how she drinks, how she seeks refuge with her mother. It's all so ordinary, so far from his world of negotiations, money, power, and quiet, empty luxury. "You'll stay here tonight," he says finally, his voice even. Ayanda's eyes widen. "Pan Taeyong, we can leave. It's late now. The child is tired. You will stay in the guest room on the first floor. We will talk tomorrow morning." He says this not as a proposal, but as an order. But there is no threat in this order. It is simply a statement of fact. Ayanda doesn't understand. She's ready for anything but this, for staying. She doesn't know what to say. She just nods, too confused to argue. "Go ahead. The first door on the right is in the east corridor." "It's all clear," he says, turning away and pouring himself another glass of water, signaling that the conversation is over. Ayanda stands up, still holding Jimin's hand, now half asleep. She grabs her bag and heads toward the designated hallway, glancing over her shoulder at the lone figure at the bar. She doesn't see his face. She sees only the hard line of his shoulders and back, illuminated by the bright light of the living room. And in that back, she reads not anger, but some other incomprehensible heaviness. They leave. Taeyong remains standing, listening to their quiet footsteps fade down the hallway. He stands alone in the large, brightly lit living room, and for the first time in years, his house doesn't just feel empty, it feels different. And he himself, standing here, feels different than he did an hour ago. The word "daddy" still hangs in the quiet air of the room, and he doesn't know how to get rid of it. And strangest of all, he's not sure he wants to. Morning. Early sunlight filters through the tall windows of the dining room. Taeyong is already seated at the table. A cup of black coffee lies before him, his plate untouched. He reads the morning reports on his tablet, but his gaze occasionally wanders to the door. He spent the night without sleep, some time in his office, sorting through papers, some simply sitting in the darkness of the living room. His thoughts swirled around the same thing: the child. The word daddy. The emptiness of his home. Ayanda's efficiency as a cleaner. Her fear. Vulnerability. Practicality warred with something completely irrational. By morning, practicality won, but with an unexpected solution. He hears quiet footsteps. Ayanda enters the dining room. She's wearing the same clothes as yesterday, a little rumpled. She looks exhausted but collected. Behind her, hiding behind her leg, is Jimin. The girl is dressed in a clean but simple dress, her hair carefully combed. She's holding the same bunny. Ayanda stops at the table, holding her daughter by the shoulder. She avoids his eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Taeyong. My apologies again for yesterday. We're ready to leave as soon as you give us permission." Taeyong puts down his tablet. He slowly takes a sip of coffee and sets the cup down on the saucer. The sound seems very loud. "Sit," he says. Not an offer, but a statement. Ayanda hesitates, but then carefully sits down on the chair opposite, placing Jimin next to her. The girl sits on the very edge, trying not to make any noise. Taeyong looks at them for a few seconds, assessing them. "You're good at your job," he begins unexpectedly. "The house is always immaculate." Ayanda blinks, unsure why. "But yesterday's situation exposed a weakness. Your personal life is interfering with your work." Ayanda lowers her head. "I know. It won't happen again. I'll find a permanent nanny. No," he interrupts. "I'm proposing another solution." He pauses, letting his words carry weight. "You and the girl will stay here, in this house. You won't just be a cleaner. You'll be a caretaker. You'll be responsible for the entire house, for cleaning, for minor repairs, for ensuring there are necessary supplies. Your daughter will live with you." Ayanda freezes. Her eyes widen. She looks at him, searching for a hint of mockery, a catch, but sees only the familiar impenetrability. "Live here?" she repeats, meaninglessly. "Yes. You'll have separate rooms. That will solve the problem of nannies and late arrivals. You'll be available whenever needed." Ayanda is silent, her mind racing. This is unexpected, strange. But there's a harsh logic to it that she understands. He's eliminating the problem by making it part of the house. She glances at Jimin, who's quietly playing with her rabbit ear, not understanding the gist of the conversation. "What are the terms?" Ayanda asks cautiously. She knows there's a price to pay for everything. Taeyong lists them clearly, point by point, as if reading out a contract. "First, you will live in rooms on the first floor in the East Wing. Second, your salary will be increased by 40%, taking into account the expanded responsibilities and 24/7 availability. Third, your primary cleaning duties will remain. Additionally, inventory control, coordination with delivery services, and hiring of contractors as needed. Fourth, your daughter is not to be a disturbance. She is not to be in my office, nor in my private quarters on the second floor, without my permission. She is not to make noise at inappropriate times. Fifth, you are not to discuss what you see or hear in this house with anyone, ever. That is the cardinal rule." He pauses to make sure she understands. "In return, you get safe housing for yourself and the child. Stability. I will provide everything the girl needs. Food, shelter, safety. That's part of the deal." Ayanda listens, her initial shock giving way to a slow realization. This isn't mercy. It's a cold, calculated exchange. Her freedom, her privacy, her time, in exchange for full-time employment and absolute loyalty. But for her, a single mother with a child, this offer is unbelievable. It's a roof over her head that doesn't leak. It's food in the fridge. It's a safe neighborhood. It's a future for Jimin. "I agree," she says quietly but firmly. "I agree on your terms, Mr. Taeyong. Thank you for this opportunity." She's not thanking you for your kindness. She's thanking you for the opportunity. He appreciates it. "Okay," he nods. "You'll go get your things today. The driver will help. I'll give you the grocery list and cleaning schedule this evening." After breakfast, which Ayanda and Jimin ate in silence, and with great care, the girl was allowed to take yogurt and a piece of bread, Taeyong briefly shows them their new apartment. It's not just a room. It's a small but separate apartment in the east wing of the house. There's a small living room with a sofa and TV, a bedroom with 2 single beds, a private bathroom, and even a tiny kitchenette with a mini fridge and stove. To Ayanda, it feels like luxury. Clean, bright linoleum on the floor, fresh paint on the walls, new curtains. Everything smells clean and new. To Jimin, it's just a very large, new space. She cautiously steps inside, holding the bunny, and looks around. "Is this our room, Mom?" she whispers. "Yes, baby. Our new room," Ayanda says, her voice trembling with a mixture of emotions, relief, fear of the future, and disbelief at such good fortune. Taeyong stands in the doorway, watching. There are closets in the bedroom. The bathroom has everything you need. If anything is missing, make a list. Don't touch things in other rooms, except those designated for cleaning. You can cook lunch and dinner here, or get them from the communal kitchen. After 7 o'clock in the evening, my wing of the house, he gestures toward the main staircase, is off limits unless summoned. He says this without a threat, simply stating the facts. "I'll be in my office. A driver will be arriving this afternoon to take you to get your things." He turns and leaves, leaving them alone in their strange new home. The door closes. Ayanda sinks onto the couch. She feels its firmness, looks at the clean walls. Jimin comes over to her and climbs onto his lap. "Are we going to live here? With a serious man?" she asks. "Yes," Ayanda says, hugging her. "We're going to live here. You have to be a really, really good girl, understand? Quiet and obedient." "Is he scary?" Jimin whispers. Ayanda considers. "No, he's strict. He has his own rules, and we have to follow them." They sit like that for a few minutes, getting used to the silence of the new room. Then Jimin climbs down and begins to cautiously explore the space. She opens the closet door, looking at the empty shelves. She peers into the sparkling clean bathtub. She goes to the window and looks out onto a different part of the garden, not the one visible from the study. Ayanda stands up and begins to examine the kitchen alcove. Everything is new. Everything works. She has her own stove, her own refrigerator. It's more than she's ever had. She feels out of place, as if she's entered someone else's life by mistake. But she also feels a heavy responsibility and determination. She will do anything to stay here, to keep this room, this chance, from vanishing like a dream. She looks at Jimin, who is now quietly humming to herself, arranging a few small stones she brought with her on the windowsill. And in that moment, fear recedes, giving way to a fragile but real hope. A week has passed. The new rhythm of life is slowly settling into the routine of the large house. Ayanda works with renewed zeal, trying to justify the trust placed in her and the new conditions. Jimin is learning to live by new rules, walking quietly, not running down long hallways, not touching anything without permission. One of the new unspoken rules is breakfast. Ayanda sets the table in the dining room for Taeyong at 7 in the morning. Sometimes he comes earlier, sometimes later. Ayanda and Jimin usually have breakfast in their small kitchen, but this morning, Jimin woke up early and really wanted to see the big table in the dining room. Ayanda, who was cleaning there, let her sit at it while she finished in the kitchen. The girl sits on a high chair, her feet not quite reaching the floor. In front of her is a plate with a sliced apple and a sandwich. But she's not eating. She's engrossed in drawing. She's brought with her a small notebook and a box of colored pencils, a gift from her mother for good behavior. Taeyong enters the dining room at precisely 7:10. He's already dressed for the day. He sees the girl at the table and pauses for a second. He gives her a short nod, their new form of greeting. Jimin looks up at him, quickly removes her feet from the chair she'd climbed onto, and nods too, trying to look serious. Then he lowers his head back to the drawing. Taeyong takes his usual place at the head of the table. Ayanda immediately places coffee, toast, and an omelet in front of him. He begins eating silently, scrolling through the news on his tablet. His gaze periodically flickers to the girl. She's completely absorbed in the process. Her tongue sticks out slightly from the effort. She carefully colors something with a bright green pencil. Then she picks up a brown one. Her movements are confident, focused. She doesn't make any noise. She simply draws, occasionally taking a bite of her apple. Taeyong watches. In his world, few things are done without purpose. But here, a child creates something because she wants to. It seems strange and a little mysterious to him. He doesn't ask what she's drawing. He simply sips his coffee and watches the little fingers working on the pencil. Later that morning, Taeyong stands in his office by the window. He's having a brief but tense phone conversation. His voice is low and even, but his tone is thick with dissatisfaction. "It's been decided. I'm not accepting excuses. Fix this by the end of the day," he says, and hangs up. He stands with his back to the door, looking into the garden but not seeing it. His shoulders are tense. The problem is small but annoying, a sign of someone's negligence. He hates negligence. The door to the office was slightly open for ventilation. Ayanda was mopping the hallway floor, and Jimin was sitting nearby, playing with her bunny. The girl heard the tone of his voice. She looked up and saw his figure in the doorway. He stood very straight and still, but in that stillness there was a sense of a storm. Jimin fell silent. She could see her mother's anger, tired with irritation in her voice. But her uncle's quiet, cold, menacing voice was different. It was frightening in its restraint. She instinctively understood that something was wrong with him. Something hurt, even if he wasn't crying or screaming. Taeyong hears a slight rustling at the door. He turns around, expecting to see Ayanda. But Jimin is standing in the doorway. She's holding her sketchbook. Her expression is serious and a little frightened, but she doesn't run away. She crosses the threshold of the office. For the first time since that day, she takes a few hesitant steps across the carpet toward him. Taeyong looks at her without saying a word. He doesn't pull her away, doesn't ask what she's doing here. He just waits. Jimin stops 2 steps away from him. She silently opens the notebook, tears out a sheet of paper, and hands it to him. Taeyong slowly picks up the piece of paper. He looks at the drawing. It depicts, in bright, slightly rough lines, a large, smiling yellow sun, a green hill, a blue stream. And on the hill are 2 figures. One is large, dressed in black. The pencil was almost worn out trying to achieve a dark color. The other is small, wearing a blue dress. They are holding hands. In the corner, in crooked letters, is written, Jimin. It's to make it easier, the girl says quietly, looking at his chest, not daring to look higher. Mom says when you're feeling bad, you should look at something good. Here. And she points her finger at the smiling sun in her drawing. Taeyong looks at the piece of paper in his hand. He looks at the crooked lines, the naive colors, the 2 figures, the big one and the small one, holding hands. Something shifts in his chest, something icy and hard, something that's been there for years like stone, cracks open. It's not warmth that breaks through, not yet, but something like silence. Not the heavy silence of an empty house, but a different kind. Simple, like the silence after the anger has stopped pounding in your temples. No one gave him drawings. No one tried to make things easier for him. His world was built on problem-solving, on pressure, on control, on force, not on smiling suns on paper. He looks up at the girl. She stands, waiting, unsure how he will react. Her eyes are filled with hope and fear of rejection. Thank you, he says finally. His voice sounds a little unusual. Not harsh, but not soft either. Just neutral. He carefully places the drawing on the edge of his desk, next to the keyboard, so as not to wrinkle it. He doesn't put it away in a drawer. He places it in plain sight. Jimin notices this. A small smile touches the corners of her lips. She understands that the gift has been accepted. She nods, turns, and quickly, almost running, slips out of the office back to her mother. Taeyong looks at the drawing again, then at the problem on his phone that needed fixing. The anger doesn't seem so acute anymore. It's still there, but it's pushed back somewhere, obscured by that stupid yellow sun. The day goes on as usual. The problem is resolved by evening. Taeyong finishes work earlier than usual. He leaves the office and heads to the kitchen to pour himself some water. Walking down the hall, he sees Jimin. She's sitting on the floor by the large window overlooking the garden, watching the sunset. The sun paints the trees in golden and pink hues. Her posture betrays a quiet melancholy. She looks small and a little lonely. She notices him and stands up, adopting her obedient pose, hands at her sides, looking at the floor. Taeyong stops. He looks at her, then out into the garden, and then back at her. Do you want to go out? He asks suddenly. Jimin's eyes widen, and she stares at him, disbelieving. Outside? She asks. Into the garden, for 5 minutes. She nods quickly, her face lighting up with suppressed delight. She glances toward her room, where her mother is, but doesn't run for permission. He's the boss. His word is law. He opens the heavy glass door leading to the terrace. The cool evening air rushes in. Jimin carefully follows him out. They stand on the terrace. Then Taeyong descends the steps onto the gravel path. Jimin follows him, trying to follow exactly in his footsteps. They walk in silence. He walks slowly, taking small steps. She stands next to him, looking around. She points to a white butterfly that has landed on a bush. He nods. She bends down to look at a large beetle on a rock. He stops and waits. They reach an old stone bench at the end of the main alley. He sits down. He doesn't invite her to sit, but he doesn't forbid her either. She sits at the other end of the bench, leaving plenty of space between them. She swings her legs, which don't quite reach the ground. They sit like that for several minutes, looking out at the darkening garden. No one says a word, but it's not an awkward silence. It's just silence. General, calm. It's time to go, he says finally, standing up. She jumps off the bench. They walk back the same way. At the door, he lets her go in first. She steps inside and stops, turning to face him. Thank you for the walk, Mr. Taeyong, she says very formally, just as her mother taught her. He looks at her serious face, illuminated by the light from the hall, and simply nods. Go to your mother. She leaves. He closes the door and turns the key. He stands in the hallway, listening to her quick, light steps fade into the corridor. He smells the evening air he brought with him from his walk, and for the first time in years, returning home doesn't feel like entering an empty, silent fortress. It feels simply like coming home. Almost a month has passed. Jimin already knows which floorboards in the hallway creak and avoids them. She's learned to distinguish between Taeyong's footsteps and her mother's. Her drawings, always with a smiling sun, now sometimes appear on the refrigerator in the shared kitchen, attached with a magnet. No one ever takes them away. It's late evening. Ayanda has finished her chores. She checks the windows on the first floor are closed and pops into the office to pick up an empty coffee cup. Taeyong hasn't left yet. He's sitting at his desk, but he's not working. He's simply looking out the window at the dark garden. On the edge of the desk lies that very first drawing. Ayanda takes the cup carefully. Sorry to disturb you, she says quietly. Taeyong turns around. He looks less focused than usual. Tired. Is she sleeping? He asks suddenly. Ayanda nods. Yes, right after I read to her. He is silent. Then he points to the chair opposite. Sit down! Ayanda sits on the edge, holding a saucer and cup in her lap. She doesn't know what this mood is. Taeyong asks. His voice lacks its usual businesslike tone. It's just a question. 4 years. Jimin was born here. The girl's father? Ayanda looks at her hands. She hadn't expected such a question, but there was no curiosity in his tone, only a statement. He left. Before she was born. He had another family in another country. We don't talk. Taeyong nods, as if this is a logical, predictable development. And your family? In Zambia. My parents, my brothers. We talk on video sometimes. They know I have a good job here. She says the last sentence with a slight emphasis, as if defending her choice. Why did you leave? Ayanda considers. She's never talked about this here. I wanted something different. More opportunities. I took courses, worked at a hotel. Then I met him. Then Jimin was born. Then I had to survive. She shrugs. Her story sounds spare and ordinary, devoid of pathos. This job, your home, this is the most stable period in all this time. Taeyong looks at her. He sees not a cleaning lady, but a person. A person who has gone through a series of decisions that led her and her child to end up under his desk in his office. His own life, with its rules, hierarchy, and control, now seems strangely removed from this simple, difficult reality. You're a good mother, he says suddenly. It's not a compliment. It's a conclusion. Ayanda looks at him, her eyes filling with water for a moment. She blinks rapidly. I'm trying, she says hoarsely. Then she stands. Is there anything else you need? No, good night. Good night, Mr. Taeyong. She leaves, taking the cup. He looks out the window again, but now he sees not just darkness, but someone's specific story, a story that is now connected to his home. A few days later, Taeyong summons his assistant, Min Seok, to his office. Min Seok is a man in his mid-30s, efficient and discreet. I need to check something, Taeyong says, not looking at him. The cleaning lady, Ayanda, she has a daughter. We need to make sure all her paperwork is in order. Visa, registration, health insurance for the child. Everything required by law. If there are any problems, resolve them, quietly. Don't attract attention. Min Seok doesn't show the slightest surprise. He simply nods. It will be done. Should I discuss the details with her? No. Just make sure everything is legal and secure. Open a separate bank account for her if she doesn't have one. Transfer part of her salary into it. She shouldn't know about this account until the time is right. Just keep it ready. Understood. And find out about kindergartens or development groups nearby. A quiet, nice place. Gather information. Min Seok throws again. Is there anything else? No, you can go. The assistant leaves. Taeyong returns to his paperwork. He's not doing this out of kindness. He's doing it out of pragmatism. A stable, secure employee who has no external problems works better. A child who goes to a good preschool develops and is less of a nuisance. It's an investment in order in his home. In efficiency, at least, that's how he explains it to himself, and the fact that the drawing of the yellow sun is still lying on his desk has nothing to do with it. It's Friday evening. Ayanda is cooking dinner in the communal kitchen. Something simple, chicken with vegetables and rice. Jimin is sitting on a high stool by the island, helping by sorting through green beans. Taeyong leaves the office earlier than usual. He goes into the kitchen to pour himself some water and pauses at the threshold. The smell of cooking, the warm light, the quiet voice of a little girl telling her mother something about her toy, all this creates a scene that has never been present in this house. Ayanda notices him and freezes. "I'm almost done, Mr. Taeyeon. I'll just clean everything up," she says quickly. He looks at the table, set for two, then at the pots on the stove. "Is this enough for 3? He asks. Ayanda blinks. Yeah, of course, but we'll eat in our room, like always." "There's room here," he says simply. He approaches the table and pulls out one of the chairs. It's not an invitation, it's a fact. Jimin looks at his mother, wide-eyed, then at Taeyong. Ayanda freezes for a second. Then her professional instincts take over. She nods. "Okay, it'll be ready in a minute." She quickly sets a third plate and cutlery on the table, pours water into another glass. She arranges the food on the plates, starting, of course, with Taeyong's. All her movements are precise, but inside, she's in a turmoil. They sit down. Taeyong is at the head of the table. Ayanda and Jimin are across from each other. An awkward silence hangs over the table. The only sound is the quiet clink of cutlery. Jimin looks at his plate, then at Taeyong. She very carefully, under the table, touches her mother's leg, as if asking what's going on. Ayanda tries to smile at her. "Eat, baby." Taeyong begins to eat. He eats slowly, with his usual restraint. Then, looking at his plate, he says, "The food is good." It's just a statement. But for Ayanda, it's like a reward. "Thank you," she breathes out. Jimin, encouraged, plucks up her courage. "Mom learned a new way to make kimchi," she tells Taeyong in her clear voice. He looks up at her. "Yeah? Which one's better?" She frowns seriously. "What Mom does now is less prickly. For me." Of Taeyong's mouth twitches slightly. It's not a smile, but it's something close. "I see," he says. The awkwardness gradually fades. They eat without speaking, but the silence is no longer so heavy. It's the silence of people simply sharing a meal. Ayanda occasionally glances at Taeyong, trying to gauge his mood. He seems simply calm. When Jimin finishes, she carefully places her spoon on the plate and says, "Thank you for dinner." She says this looking at her mother, but the wording clearly includes him as well. Taeyeon nods. "You can go play," Ayanda says quietly. The girl climbs down from her chair and with one last glance at the adults, runs off to her room. Ayanda starts collecting the plates. "Leave them," says Taeyeon. "You can do it later." He stands up. He stands next to the table for a second, looking at the empty chair where Jimin had been sitting. "The driver will take you shopping tomorrow. You need things for winter. For her, too. Make a list." He doesn't wait for an answer. He turns and goes into his office. Ayanda stands among the dirty dishes, under the warm light of the kitchen chandelier. She looks at the two empty places and the one at the head of the table. The smell of their shared dinner still lingers in the air, and she realizes that something has changed. Not in the rules, not in the conditions, but in something else, in the very air of this house. It is no longer just cold and empty. It now smells of life, their life. A week after that family dinner, Min Seok comes into Taeyong's office. His assistant has his usual stony face, but Taeyong detects a slight tension in his posture. "There's a problem," Min Seok says without preamble. "Park Jung-hwan." Taeyong slowly puts down his pen. Park Jung-hwan is an old rival. Their rivalry has been going on for years, cold and polite on the surface, full of undercurrents beneath. What did he do? He found a weak spot. Min Seok places the folder on the table. Ayanda, her daughter. His people checked their documents, found discrepancies, an old expired certificate. He plans to exploit it. Taeyong opens the folder. There are printouts, photos of Ayanda walking hand-in-hand with Jimin in the park, copies of her old papers with red marks. The threat isn't the documents themselves. His people have already corrected everything. The threat is publicity. The attention of immigration officials. Deportation. Park knows Taeyong is now interested in them, and he's found a way to strike. Taeyong's voice was even. "Tomorrow, at the old club on the waterfront. He wants to discuss mutual concessions, Clearly, he'll demand the port supply contract be ceded to him. Taeyong closes the folder. The contract is important, but he's not thinking about the money. He's thinking about the photo in the folder. Ayanda and Jimin walking through the park. The girl is looking at a balloon. They're defenseless. They've become a target because of him. Prepare all the new documents on them. Everything is clear. And find out who leaked the information to Park within our organization, Taeyong says. His eyes are cold. The next day, Taeyong arrives at the waterfront club. It's neutral territory, an expensive, dimly lit place. Park Jung-hwan is already seated at a table in the corner. He's older than Taeyong, with graying temples and a familiar smile that never reaches his eyes. Taeyong-si, how nice to see you, he says, gesturing for them to sit down. Taeyong sits down. They exchange formalities for a minute. Then Park pours him a whiskey. Unfortunately, this meeting isn't entirely for pleasant reasons, Park sighs. I've learned of some awkward circumstances in your home. Your new caretaker, a lovely woman, and her child. It's a shame, but their legal status, as I understand it, is somewhat precarious. Taeyong takes the glass, but doesn't drink. He looks at Park. What do you want? I want to help avoid a scandal. Park's face turns serious. You don't want to get into trouble with the authorities over some servants, do you? I can sort it all out, quietly, in exchange for a small favor. A portfolio of supplies in the port area. You don't really need it, but I really do. Taeyong places his glass on the table. He doesn't blink. You're mistaken, Parksy. Wrong? Park's eyebrows rise. First of all, their paperwork is in perfect order. Everything's been verified. Everything is legal. I took care of it myself. Park's expression loses a little confidence. He hadn't expected this. Second, Taeyong continues in the same even tone, Ayanda and her daughter are not servants. They are under my protection, complete and absolute. He pauses, letting the words sink in. And third, the port contract will remain mine, because you will withdraw your application. Today, Park freezes. His smile disappears. On what basis? Are you threatening me? No. Taeyong leans forward slightly. I'm informing you. You spent resources trying to find a weakness, but there is no weakness. There is only the fact. By touching them, you touch me personally. Not my interests, not my organization. Me. Are you ready for such a war, Parksy? Not a business competition. A war without rules? A flicker of calculation flashes in Park's eyes, followed by a cold understanding. He's studied Taeyong for years. He's always been calculating, cold, and driven by self-interest. But now he sees a different man. He speaks quietly, but behind his words lies not business logic, but something deeper, something personal. And Park understands, this isn't a bluff. This man, known for his ruthless rationality, is now driven by something irrational. And an irrational opponent is the most dangerous. You can't reason with him. You can't predict him. Park leans back in his chair. He's lost before he's even started. His trump card has proven a phony, and the stakes have suddenly risen to an unacceptable level. I think I underestimated the situation, he says finally, his voice losing its former confidence. Yes, Taeyong agrees. You underestimated. Will the contract be revoked by this evening? Park nods, pursing his lips. It will be revoked. Taeyong stands up. He doesn't shake Park's hand. He simply looks down at him. Never come near my house again, or anyone who lives in it. He turns and leaves. His footsteps echo loudly in the nearly empty hall. Park remains seated, his face darkening. He's just encountered something new, a shield he didn't expect. Not made of steel or money, but something stronger. Taeyong returns home. It's evening. The light is on in the hallway. Quiet voices and the smell of fried pancakes drift from the kitchen. Ayanda is spoiling Jimin. He walks into the office, but doesn't turn on the light. He sits down in the chair in the dark. He's just changed the rules of the game. He's put his reputation as a cool negotiator, his safety on the line for the sake of two people who've accidentally entered his life. Before, his strength lay in the fact that there was nothing to cling to. He had no weaknesses. There was nothing more valuable than calculation. Now there is. He thinks of the fear in Ayanda's eyes that first evening, of Jimin's trusting touch on his leg, of the drawing of the sun on the table, of the quiet walk in the garden, of the dinner they shared. He gets up and goes to the window. A warm yellow light shines through the kitchen window. He sees Ayanda's silhouette washing dishes. He sees Jimin run up to her and wave a piece of paper at her, probably another drawing. Before, this light, these sounds would have been an intrusion. Now they are part of the background. part of what the word home means. He hadn't become softer. He hadn't become weaker. He had simply acquired a new context, a new point of reference. His world was no longer limited to his office, his deals, and the quiet, eerie emptiness of the mansion. It had expanded. It had embraced the children's laughter through the wall, the smell of home-cooked meals, the responsibility not only for the business, but also for the fragile lives that now depended on his decisions. It's uncomfortable. It makes him vulnerable. It goes against every rule he's lived by. But when he looks at that warm kitchen light, at those two silhouettes, he feels no desire to return to the old, cold emptiness. He feels something else, a feeling that doesn't yet have a name, something heavy but solid, like an anchor. He returns to the desk and turns on the table lamp. A beam of light falls on the drawing of a yellow sun. He sits down and takes up the papers again. Work does not wait. But now, as he makes calculations, he knows he is protecting more than just an empire. He is protecting a home, his home, and this knowledge changes everything. It doesn't make him any easier. It makes him different. For the first time in many years, the future seems to him not just a series of predictable steps, but something alive. And this doesn't frighten him. It gives him a new, different strength. Taeyeon doesn't tell Ayanda about the meeting with Park. There's no reason to scare her. Min Seok reports in the morning that the contract has been revoked and the source of the leak has been found and neutralized. Life goes on, but the changes in the house are becoming more and more noticeable. A bright blue children's mug with a lid now always stands in the kitchen. It sits on the bottom shelf of the cabinet, next to his austere porcelain cups. Once a week, a driver takes Ayanda and Jimin shopping, and sometimes to the children's park. Jimin has started visiting a small art studio twice a week. Her drawings are growing. One morning, Taeyeon leaves her office and sees Jimin in the hallway. She's standing on an ottoman, carefully hanging something on the wall. She's pinning a new drawing to a small corkboard that wasn't there before. It depicts a large house. Smoke billows from the chimney. A bird sits on the roof. 3 figurines stand by the door. A large one, a medium one, and a small one. She spots him and freezes, pin in hand. "Can I?" she asks, pointing to the board. "Mom said we can. This is our gallery." Taeyong looks at the drawing, at the 3 figures by the door. He nods once, briefly. "Okay." He goes into the kitchen. Then, returning with coffee, he stops in front of the board again. The figures are drawn holding hands. The medium figure is wearing a dress. The small one is also wearing a dress. The large one is wearing black. He looks at it for a few seconds, then goes into the office. In the evening, Ayanda comes into the office with documents to sign. Utility bills, gardener's bills. Min Seok used to handle these things. Now Taeyeon delegates them to her. He signs the papers, and she stands and waits. "The studio. Does she like it?" he asks, not looking at her. "Very much. She brought a clay cup today. She says she made it for the house." Ayanda hesitates a little. He signs the last sheet and hands it over. "Tomorrow the driver will take you to pick up new winter clothes. For her, and for you too. Need a warm jacket and boots." Ayanda wants to protest that she has a jacket, but she meets his gaze. He doesn't argue. He informs. She simply nods. "Okay, thank you. And buy something for this board, to make it easier to hang the pictures." Ayanda smiles, unable to contain herself. "Okay, Mr. Taeyong." When she leaves, he looks at the drawing of the yellow sun again. Then he takes a thin magnet from the top drawer of his desk. He attaches the drawing to the metal side of the bookcase. Now it's visible from his place at the desk. A few more days pass. It's late evening, and Taeyong is late on the phone. He goes out into the hall and hears quiet voices coming from the living room. Ayanda is reading Jimin a story. He stops by the door, remaining in the shadows of the hallway. He hears Ayanda's slow, calm voice. He hears Jimin ask why the prince didn't immediately recognize the princess. He hears his mother's soft laughter in response. He stands and listens. This sound is not silence. It is different. It is alive. Jimin says something, her voice growing sleepy. Then Ayanda begins to quietly hum a song, in a language Taeyeon doesn't understand. The melody is simple, a lullaby. Taeyong moves away from the door and goes up to his bedroom on the second floor. But even there, in the silence of his rooms, he seems to hear echoes of that melody. They don't bother him. They're simply there. Jimin looks sleepy at breakfast this morning. "Did you sleep badly?" Ayanda asks, smoothing her hair. Jimin shakes his head. "No, I had a good dream." "What kind of dream?" "That we all ate a huge cake together. And then we looked at the stars. Ayanda glances quickly at Taeyong, who is drinking coffee. He hears, but doesn't react. After breakfast, as Ayanda leads Jimin off to get ready for the studio, Taeyong stops her with a glance. "Tonight, after dinner," he says, "if she doesn't have classes, we can light the fireplace in the living room." Ayanda blinks. The fireplace is rarely used. "Okay," she says. "I'll get everything ready." That evening, when Jimin is already in his pajamas, the fireplace crackles, casting warm light on the walls. Ayanda is knitting something on the sofa. Jimin is sitting on the rug in front of the fire, putting together a puzzle. Taeyong comes down from the study. He goes into the living room, takes a book from the shelf, and sits down in his chair by the fireplace, slightly to the side. He opens the book but doesn't read. He looks at the fire, at the girl, intently searching for the right part, at the woman, whose hands move calmly and confidently. Jimin finds the piece and squeals with joy. Then he looks at Taeyong. "Look, it was a piece of sky. I found it." Taeyong looks at the puzzle piece in her hands, blue with a white cloud. "Yes," he says, "that's the sky." He looks at the fire again, and at that moment, in the warmth of the fireplace, amid the quiet crackling of the logs and the rustle of pages, he doesn't even turn. He feels it with complete clarity. This isn't a deal, not a contract, not a strategy. This is life. Simple, ordinary, alien, but it became part of his own. It came unbidden, filled a void he hadn't even realized, and changed everything. It made him vulnerable. And in this vulnerability, he found a new foothold, more solid than all his previous calculations. He looks at Jimin, who is once again immersed in the puzzle, and at Ayanda, who is smiling at her daughter, and he understands that this is his new beginning. Not loud, not bright, quiet, like this evening by the fireplace, but real, the only thing that matters.